Part 1. Unpacking. In a way, video games themselves are kind of like time capsules. They remind us of how we have grown and that humans have always invented and improved things much like we do now. But what if we all had our own personal time capsule? What if we could dig it back up? Could the objects we lived with in our lives say more about us than words ever could? Can the objects we own really tell our story? Welcome to Unpacking. This video was made thanks to my YouTube members ZS and Evan the Cat. Your support makes these videos the best they can be. Thank you, and enjoy the video. Unpacking is described as a puzzle game. The core gameplay of Unpacking is so insanely simple. You unpack. Idiot, what did you think this game would be about? Each chapter of the game brings you to a new home, allowing you to unpack the protagonist's belongings and place them down in the correct positions. By correct position, I of course mean putting your PC in the bathtub. It can hard drive, but can it hard swim? That's such a stupid joke, what am I saying? Each item in the game has a certain length and height to them, just like real objects in the real world. And although there are limits to where you can put stuff, if it fits and makes some general sense, the game lets you put it there. From that description, it sounds like a chore simulator with restrictions. But unpacking things is unbelievably stress relieving when you don't have to lift or cut any boxes or move around like you would in real life. And it's so fun to play this game while ignoring real chores you have to do in real life. Although doing an extremely large chore like unpacking your move-in boxes doesn't sound intensely fun, well, it's not. At least it's not fun on the surface. If you're playing this game by just mindlessly placing down everything and only caring about if it's in a place the game deems correct, then this game will only seem like a chore to you. By playing the game this way, it may technically allow you to progress, but you won't enjoy the game at all. It will feel tireless and pretentious and useless. By immersing yourself deeper in the world that is given to you, you may find that this game is much deeper and more interesting than storing bowls in a cupboard and putting a sponge in the sink. It tells a tale using nothing but the game's mechanics and design. Some games do this, but never has a game solely done this and just this to inform the player of its story. And it's the story that makes Unpacking a truly unique game. Part 2. A story. We begin in a small room. A room with a couple of shelves, a bed, a desk below it, and a storage unit. In the middle of the room sits 3 boxes, and here the game begins. First impressions matter a lot for us to connect and understand a character, and this is how Unpacking does it. Just from the objects you begin to unpack, you begin to find out more about the protagonist you play as. You take out objects such as school supplies, a horse drawing, and plushies, making it quite clear that we're playing the role of a kid, getting the responsibility to move their own stuff wherever they'd like. Thank God we weren't playing the role of a 19-year-old gamer boy, because the game would have been over quite quickly if it were our ideal room we had to unpack in. Other clues may hint at the gender of our protagonist, such as the skipping rope, the pony toys, and the pink and purple colours on the school supplies, which are often bought by the parents of girls. However, footballs and action figures are generally advertised as a boys' product, especially in the 90s. I know this is generalising and stereotyping, but parents generally get their kids stuff depending on their gender when they are very young. It isn't until around teenage when kids actually find their own interests, which often grow out of these stereotypes. But it is obvious that the kid we are playing as right now is young, so we are introduced to our protagonists based on the stereotypes their parents have. If you pay attention to what you're actually unpacking, more stuff gets revealed to you. The plushies and pictures on the walls imply the protagonist has a fondness for animals, especially pigs and horses. The dreidel indicates our protagonist is of Jewish faith, or is at least in a family that are of Jewish faith. Going back to the football, they also proudly present an award for the sport, which also means this child protagonist is great at sports and likes physical activity. The Game Boy and the crayons tell us that our protagonist also has a fun and creative side to them. The game presents this as our first impression of the protagonist, and it uniquely tells us all of this without us ever meeting them. It does trust the player to pick up on these clues, but what's brilliant about it is that some clues are more subtle than others. In fact, you've been staring at massive clues for the last few minutes. You may not have put any importance towards the wallpaper and general wall design, but it implies the house is located in Brisbane, Australia. These types of sidings are popular in homes in Brisbane, and without knowing that, you may have never picked up that the game is set in Australia. This is all in one room, one chapter of the game, and it does an exceptional job of introducing the player into what they will be doing and what they should be looking out for. But again, this is only a single kid's room, barely enough room to swing that pig plush. The warm sun peers in through the window of their room, and we finish the chapter. The child you once knew is now 7 years older and starting university. They grow up so fast. Maybe too fast, that was like 10 seconds. Our protagonist, who I will call Sadie from now on, as that seems to be the fandom's most popular name for her, moves into a flat. We start off in the bedroom once again, but this time less childlike and colourful, an indication that she is more mature. Sadie, as she grows up, has more responsibility within each new place she unpacks in. In contrast to the last chapter, we now need to unpack in 3 rooms compared to 1. Gameplay wise, this makes sense, but it also represents how Sadie has aged. After you put away all the clothes, uni supplies and your pig plush again, you now have both a kitchen and a bathroom to unpack in. Although there isn't anything groundbreaking gameplay wise, they do play into the chore part of this game. The part of the game that isn't as fun as putting away funny toys or games or computers. No, storing away pots and pans, sponges and dish soap, toilet paper and tampons, this is where the sudden jump from child to young adult hits Sadie, or at least from what we see. Redecorating is always fun when you have to move stuff you like. Now with more responsibilities, she must unpack more household items, which means more gameplay for you, the player. And these items tell you less about Sadie and more about yourself. Where would you put these items in a flat of your own, for example? Speaking of the tampons, this is also a way of telling the player that Sadie is a person who goes through a menstrual cycle, which is another hint at the identity of the person we are getting to learn about in this game. That and the bras and panties that we have to put away in the bedroom too. I'm terrible at organising clothes, by the way, so if you see this footage and like you hate it, don't blame me. Blame my lack my lack of being able to store away clothes. Yell at me in the comments. Remember though, we have yet to see Sadie, so everything we know about her is purely from us guessing things about her, based off of what she's taking out of these boxes. With the many art supplies and books you need to unpack also telling us that Sadie is probably studying some kind of art at uni. Her love for football is still strong, with her bringing the ball with her, and her love for her old plushies continues too. The mighty pig is still here, only without his ribbon. Like I was saying before, these items either tell you about Sadie or they tell you about yourself. Like, where would you put forks, knives and spoons? In what order would you put them in? I never knew I had a preferred way until I played this game. Unpacking always gives you certain places to put things, but very rarely will you ever get through a game of unpacking without unknowingly putting something in its incorrect spot. This is the puzzle element of the game. It is closer to being a puzzle game than anything else, so I guess it is a puzzle game in a way. This is unrelated, but you can also just like turn off the ability for the game to tell you that the thing is in the wrong spot. So if you turn that off, then there's no puzzle at all. You just get to put stuff anywhere you want. But for the sake of this video, we'll keep it on. It is mostly a relaxing game, but in these moments where you think you're done, the game tells you, no, go back and change it, idiot. Believe it or not, this aspect of the game is woven into the story too, but that will be tackled later in this video. Three years later, and something is immediately slapped in our faces. A bright orange and white ensemble of clothing placed on a standee. It's so attention-grabbing and is the very first thing you see in this room. When I say room, I meant apartment. Wait, no, it's not an apartment either. It's a house. Sadie's living in a house now, wow. She's moving up in the world. A bungalow home in a quaint neighbourhood, with 2 other roommates. I assume. Well, if there aren't any roommates, then she's renting or buying a home with 2 extra bedrooms she doesn't need, which is a bit of a waste of money, but anyway, yes, the sitting room is the first room we meet in this chapter, decked with fashion, projects and equipment already organised and placed in the house. This tells us Sadie's graduated from uni and is now embarking on a fashion adventure, possibly aspiring to be a designer or a tailor. Well, that's what I thought originally, until I realised I couldn't move any of these objects at all. They were unmovable. I wasn't just looking at Sadie's life, I was looking at her roommates' lives now too. The game does this very subtly because most people I see play this chapter, myself included, originally believe Sadie is just a fashion designer now. But as we explore the home and realize the map of the home has 2 other bedrooms, we begin to realize not everything in this home is Sadie anymore. Along with books and board games, we see the only living things these rooms will ever show us. And that's a pet insect. Very important character. We also now have 5 rooms to unpack in. The sitting room, the bedroom, the kitchen, the bathroom, and the dining room. Again, the amount of rooms indicating how far Sadie has come in a couple of years. More responsibilities than ever before. Granted, some of these already unpacked items can be moved. Thank God some of these can be moved because the roommates are terrible at putting stuff away. Like, I know I'm bad, but I mean, this is just, oh, look at the state of the kitchen. Oh my god. Where the first 2 chapters of the game do a great job at world building, the 3rd chapter slightly overwhelms you. 3 rooms are bigger than 1, but 5 rooms are a lot more intimidating than 3. It also means that there are more stuff you need to unpack, which means there's more you could miss. How could one possibly track everything that you unpack in this massive house without missing something? You're more likely to remember stuff Sadie has already had than to remember new stuff that just shows up here. Speaking of stuff Sadie already has, the first thing I noticed that was absent when I finished the chapter was she didn't bring her football. Sure, she still has weights, a frisbee, and mountain climbing gear, but her football doesn't appear. And spoiler alert, it never does again. Remember when I told you Unpacking does a great job at introducing Sadie? It also does a great job at unintroducing Sadie. Clues you gather from one chapter may be completely gone or rarely seen later on. It's an indicator that much like us, Sadie has her interests that she keeps for life, but also many interests she grows out of or forgets. When making a fictional protagonist, you must avoid overcomplicating things. Often protagonists have goals that rarely change and a personality and likes that stay constant. Sadie grows like a real human, and her interests dipping and rising over time is what gives this game its story. What does Sadie like now, and what will she like in the next 4 years? People change drastically over the course of 4 years. For example, 4 years ago I was making a Minecraft video, and 4 years later... Okay, but my videos have gotten better in quality, I promise. They've gotten way better in quality. I've actually been doing YouTube for 6 years, on and off, but I recently privated my oldest videos because I know they're low effort, and I want my channel to be represented by the best I can offer. But those videos show me now of what and who I used to be. My old interests, my old voice, my old self. I say old, it was only 6 years ago, but it goes to show that much like Sadie, I don't see myself as that person anymore. I wouldn't make those types of videos now, much like Sadie wouldn't play football or skip rope again. She has grown, and we're only on chapter 3. We open to a modern room, a very un-Sadie-like room, a type of interior design we have not yet seen. We think maybe Sadie made it as a big artist, maybe she works in a big animation studio. She could definitely afford this type of house then, but as you look closer at the room before you even start unpacking, you realize none of these things are Sadie's interests, or even her friends. There's so much music-related items like a CD rack and artist posters. There are Xbox games and a set of weights that look way more intense than what Sadie had had in the previous house. Well, maybe she became a bodybuilder, I said to myself in denial. This apartment was not Sadie's place. Despite how much I tried to justify it to myself with her being big in the animation studios and getting loads of money and being able to afford this type of place, it never felt like it was Sadie's place. We begin to realize Sadie is in a relationship with an utter douchebag. How do we confirm this? I mean, look at the apartment. Tell me this isn't the most pretentiously designed place you've ever seen. It's almost too modern. Yes, this apartment is Sadie's new boyfriend's place. And what this chapter tells us is that this new boyfriend he's a prick. Unfortunately for Sadie and us, this chapter of the game has so much stuff in the apartment already. Clothes in the wardrobe, books, game controllers, Japanese sand things. The place in general barely has enough room for Sadie to move in. The boyfriend's entire personality seems to be quite the polar opposite to Sadie. Her last few homes had that rural charm and innocence to them. This apartment just screams rich and successful loser to me. Sure, it's modern, but it lacks so much personality. And so does the boyfriend. His only interest appears to be music and games. Like, dude, everyone likes those things. I like music, I like games. You're a character in a video game. This is your chance to shine. Be something. Despite his lack of a personality or any adorable plushies or any admirable traits at all, he still manages to clutter up everything. Which means this chapter of the game involves simply working around or rearranging what the boyfriend already has, which, believe it or not, makes this chapter annoying. While playing, I swore I was moving things I had placed earlier way more than in previous chapters. It's almost like the game's mechanics were telling me that Sadie was annoyed, telling me she was having trouble simply just moving in with this absolute cabbage. Never mind the dates they went on or the movie nights they had or the breakfasts they shared together. If moving in was a struggle for Sadie, it's sad to say, but she might just be in a bad relationship. And the game tells us this straight up. To use an analogy here, most of this game is like pretty graffiti with deeper meanings behind some colours in the paint. But this moment, this one single moment in Unpacking, doesn't just hint at what Sadie's going through, it tells us. We unpack her diploma, her prized education certificate, a symbol of her hard work and effort as a human being, and we look at the walls, and we realise this bitch of a boyfriend has no room on the walls. So much useless pictures up here. Can we not just move these over a bit? No? Can we not do that? We check the bedroom. The kitchen. The only place it lets you hang this diploma up is the bathroom above the toilet. Remember before when I said the amount of rooms we could unpack in corresponded to the amount of freedom and responsibility Sadie had? We started with 1 room, then to 3, then to 5, and now in this chapter, 4. She takes a step back. The first chapter of the game only took me 22 minutes for me to complete. The previous 2 chapters took me around 40 minutes to complete. This chapter took me 1 hour and 11 minutes. Need I remind you, the previous 5-room chapter only took me 44 minutes. This chapter, with a room less, took me half an hour longer. And I believe this is totally by design. This chapter was pure torture to go through, but I was finally happy with the way I unpacked things. I was finally done after an hour of constant moving things around. And then the inevitable wrong place things began to flash. I went around fixing them, but then got to the bathroom. The diploma wouldn't stay on the wall. I took it around the apartment again, hoping I was wrong, that there was a place for this achievement to be hung. Nothing. She was not allowed to move her boyfriend's album posters, his guitar hung on the wall. She has nowhere to put it. The only place it lets you put it is under the bed. This moment is storytelling, and it's infuriating, and I hated seeing how Sadie was being treated. I hated how she could barely fit enough room for herself in this house. I hated how she couldn't move a $2 poster to hang her diploma, and I hated the aesthetic of the apartment, and I hated this stupid boyfriend so much, and I never even met him. This is not who Sadie is, but despite all sign of this being Sadie, it doesn't feel like the character we watched grow up. And soon, reality sets in. Well, this place looks familiar. Immediately we realise Sadie has broken up with that numbskull of a boyfriend. But she is obviously in a very low place. Compare the room we saw at the beginning to the room we see now. In a way, it made me realise that deep down, we're all just kids, and even though we may think responsibilities make us feel more like adults, we have nowhere else to go than our inner child when it all crashes on top of us. The draining exhaustion of adult life, wanting to fit in and work and drive and get married, it's all a juggling act by someone, everyone labelled an adult. All of these responsibilities pressured onto you, just a kid that grew up. So anyway, I started unpacking the boxes in the silly video game again. A depressed single Sadie is back in her childhood bedroom, and we actually also get to put our stuff in the bathroom this time too. So we now go from 1 room, to 3 rooms, to 5 rooms, to 4 rooms, to 2. We do see a sewing machine here, but not the same one in chapter 3, you know, the one we couldn't move. Perhaps Sadie took up some sewing from her roommate. Sadie has a lot of belongings that simply don't show up here. All of her kitchen appliances, her PC, etc, etc. Most of what's in this small kid's room are glimpses of what Sadie used to be. The old posters she hangs on the walls, her forgotten plushies, the martial art belts, her football awards. A lot of these objects that fills the room are not who Sadie is anymore. The same room, the same tree outside, the same evening sun that shines through the window, but a different person. It is also here where it is most noticeable that her plushies are becoming victim to wear and tear. We've all been through that, seeing a beloved teddy bear or something we've kept with us forever degrade and fall apart after going through the pressure of time. I'm not just talking about the plushies. As they say, to be loved is to be changed. Sadie is changed. She hates her ex for the things he did, but she hates herself too. She still keeps her diploma under the bed, refusing to believe in herself. I of course did that for dramatic effect. You can hang it on the wall, but you get the idea. She still hates what she's gone through and what she's put herself through. But the overall tone and sound of the music never feels sad. Reflective and a little lost, but never defeated. And I love this part of the game. It never felt sad, even when it was sad. And one thing is for sure, she hates this boyfriend just as much as I do. Much like the diploma in the previous chapter, this particular photo of Sadie and her ex can go nowhere else aside from the storage unit where it belongs, because nobody's ever going to see it in there. When you hang it up on the corkboard, she jams a pin to this guy's dumb face. For real though, this is a moment of anger in a game that has very little emotion. In contrast to everything else, she literally changes this item as she unpacks it, and it's so cool it shows this. I never liked the boyfriend anyway, so props to you, Sadie, but I really liked how this game never made it seem like Sadie was at a roadblock in her life, that things will never work out, because there's always a way. I was happy to see this chapter and see that we were decorating an actual nice house for once. Sadie's experience with that boyfriend prick didn't keep her down. And you know what? That's great for Sadie. She's gone through a heartbreaking experience with her ex and also has a cane by the front door, which could imply other things about her, but she hasn't let it stop her from traveling the world, collecting Wii games, collecting chicken plushies, working as an artist, and going out into the world of owning her own property. If there's something we know about Sadie, it's that she's independent and can confidently move into any place she likes. She never stayed in any of these places for too long or considered them a home, aside from the childhood home where she goes when she's upset. Now she has a place, a real proper place all to herself, that she has earned and worked for, and it's this that makes Sadie happy. It makes her feel accomplished. Sure, a lot of this chapter was setting up the kitchen for me, but for the first time it felt good to organize things in the kitchen and the bathroom. For the first time in the game, Sadie was in a place of her own, and it made me feel like putting more effort into making her place nicer since she was in a much better spot. Now that diploma hangs confidently above her desk, and I love that we finally get to see Sadie in a position where she doesn't have school or uni, she doesn't have roommates or a partner, it's just her doing what she loves, in a place she's happy with. It's so great to see her recover in this way. Even though the entire game is just packing her stuff away, we see this storytelling. And I loved this storytelling. When I ended the chapter and began playing the next, I had no idea what to expect. How is the game going to end if this isn't the last chapter? For a second, I think I pressed the wrong button. This looks just like the house I just finished unpacking in. But then I realised boxes, and different coloured boxes to the ones we've had throughout the entire game. Much like how Sadie had to unpack her own stuff in her ex-boyfriend's apartment, this time someone is moving in with Sadie. But unlike her ex, Sadie helps them unpack, which displays both how bad the ex is, again, but also how caring Sadie truly is. Sadie has been treated badly in the past, but she doesn't stoop to that level. The person who moves in with Sadie also has a similar vibe to her. She owns other plushies that sit next to Sadie's on the bed, but she also wears colourful dresses and has way more personality than the ex ever did. Sadie has a new partner, and it's amazing to see her finally find somebody that's similar to her. But also it's great that she has her own quirks and interests too. They're not carbon copies of each other, but they also share similar interests with each other, which is good for a relationship. There are so many context clues that hint at what the partner's really like. She brings more makeup than Sadie does, wears more skirts than Sadie does, and is a plant lover, bringing in a good few new plants and gardening equipment into the main room and the bedroom. But to be completely genuine here, I really didn't expect this game to bring in more and more ideas like this as it continued. Like, learning about Sadie in this game is so interesting, but then unpacking her girlfriend stuff is so refreshing too. Like most of Sadie's items we have seen before, but with the girlfriend, we have so many new things, new clothes, new board games we can unpack now. We're unpacking another person's life. What a great ending to this game. That was not the ending to the game. In true video game fashion, the final chapter of Unpacking has the most rooms and has most things to unpack in the entire game. Sadie and her partner have moved into, and wait for this, a 2-story house. The only chapter in the game that has multiple floors. This one obviously took me the longest to do, but that doesn't mean I was overwhelmed, and neither was Sadie. It's just a bigger house. Okay, I was a little overwhelmed because there's 10 rooms to unpack in, but it was such an enjoyable time seeing Sadie establish herself in a happy environment with a partner she loves, a house she adores, and a child a child? The final chapter of this game is basically every other chapter culminated in one chapter. There's so much game. Put that sentence in the review. But the big final storytelling part in this chapter is the revelation that Sadie will be a mother, setting up a baby's room in this big final house. And so ends Unpacking. What exactly made me want to talk about it, I hear you not asking? Well, let me tell you. Part 3. Without words. There are very few games that often made me reflect on my own life like Unpacking has. I think your average game can intrigue you with a plot or a cast of characters or an interesting world, and although it is innovative stories and characters that often stick with us the longest, like Arthur Morgan from Red Dead 2 or Joel and Ellie from The Last of Us, I find that these characters and their journeys extremely memorable because of who they are and what they've gone through. You spend hours of your life playing as a protagonist, so you spend that time with them a lot. When you finish the game, you should have a certain idea of who the protagonist is, what they're like, who they really are. When I put down Unpacking, I enjoyed Sadie's journey, but that's not why I fondly enjoyed this game. It did tell a fantastic story using only objects and things that you could find around your house, but when I unpacked toothpaste, dish soap, sponges, clothes, plushies, it teleported my mind into what I personally have kept in my own life. The storytelling in this game is exceptional, but I couldn't help but draw similarities between the life in this game and my own. The fact that mere pixel art video game consoles and art pieces and toys were giving me these moments of reflection. This is just a game where you move objects. Why is it so beautiful? How does it tell me my own stories, and how do I connect with a fictional character like this? Where I do not connect with a character, but instead the person I used to be. Unpacking is not simply a design haven game. It is not just a customizable experience tycoon game. It discovers emotions in you. If you're not connecting to Sadie's story, you're connecting to your own. You might play as a character going through a coded, predetermined life, but it truly never feels like this character is there. You're merely playing as the objects in this universe, moving them around to your heart's content. Sadie's life is portrayed by objects, and the funniest thing is that's not special. We all can be portrayed by objects. What we love, who we hate, nothing tells you more about the person you are than the objects you surround yourself with. There's nothing special about books, or Rubik's Cubes, or Game Cubes, or pajamas, or diplomas, or Beatles, or music albums, or sketchbooks, or plushies. There's millions of them. There's nothing beautiful about them. There's no beauty in these items that we give importance to. Shortly after I played Unpacking, my dad told me this story about how every time he visits his childhood home, each time he glances out through the glass of the porch door, he can see himself as a kid playing football with his friends. There was something about that time he spent in that house with that football that still continues in his mind. We all have that thing, that object we can never let go of. Maybe even multiple objects we cannot let go of. That sentimental piece that will stick with us forever. We all have that beautiful, beautiful part about us that will keep us going. And while time will erode these items that we love, that thing that's so special about them, it's beyond words. Unpacking is a game about moving objects. Unpacking is a game that made me look at my life beyond words. Because that's truly what we are. We are all a story beyond words.